morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome and thank you so very much for being with us. It is an honor, privilege and pleasure to be here, and I get to play with my friend Benny and the beautiful Brenda. Absolutely fabulous woman in Canada. Even though Benny and I are down under here in Australia today, we get to send our love and our blessings and our best wishes all around the world, and maybe even to you too. Let's wrap ourselves in that gorgeous feeling that we are indeed great. I woke up this morning and I started reading some of the news, Brenda, and I thought, oh, I can't wait to have this conversation. If only the entire world was emotionally intelligent and socially intelligent, golly gosh, Sharama, where would we be?
Yeah.
Well, we are on that
Not
mission
here.
together, aren't we? Benny, handing over to you because I know that you do a formal introduction to our guests, and thank goodness you do.
I think as spectacular as this introduction coming up is, I think I prefer yours, Kim. I think that's why I prefer the yarns. But this is yeah, really massive welcome to Kim Serafini and Brenda Jacobson. Here's a few words about Brenda. Brenda is passionate about helping people tap into their innate magic to enhance all levels of life. This became a personal quest after she fell over 3,000 feet down a mountain while skiing, resulting in 5 years of recovery. Combining the wisdom gained from this experience with decades as a speaker, author, international trainer, finance executive, and business strategist, she has emerged as a master of optimizing personal performance. Can't wait to dive into that. She founded Awakening Consciously to provide new world tools and strategies for people to awaken their lives, reclaim their power, and illuminate their magic. And she also has a session. She's also a Positive Prime author on the Positive Prime platform, with a session called Illuminate Your Magic. So welcome, Brenda. And I read something actually where I'd love to start. And I think it's in the magic realm. May as well start there. But your experiences as a 5-year-old, and I'd love to hear about how that experience of magic came about. And also, I guess what I read was about the troubles you had there trying to come to terms with what this gift was, and how that's kind of led to your amazing work now.
Through my childhood. Yes, I came in very intuitive. So I saw spirits. I knew things that other people didn't know. And as a 4 or 5-year-old, you don't have a clue that nobody else sees the world the same way that you did. So you don't have any filters on. And I learned very young. I learned when my parents decided to put me on tranquilizers in grade 1. So what are you, 6 years old or something? To stop my daytime nightmares. This is what they were called. It made me realize, it made me think that there was something wrong with me, that I was broken. And from that point on, I couldn't let people know the truth about me. I had to hide from the world. So I spent even up into my adult years, like I probably spent 30 years hiding from the world and hiding me from the world and not tapping into that magic that I had, that gift that I was given to bring to the world. I wouldn't allow it to come out. So it started to merge on its own when I was in my early 40s, maybe, and I couldn't hold it back. I tried really hard to hold it back, and it was like I had established a really nice world over here as a finance executive, very left brain, and was very effective at blocking out the other stuff until I wasn't, until the worlds kind of collided, and there was no way to hold it back. It was ready to come forth, and spirit was very tired of my shenanigans of trying to hide from the world. So there it was.
Can you remember a specific moment when it just burst forth and you couldn't hold it back any longer?
Do you know, it was coming forth in little bits and pieces, but where I finally realized that the world was ready for it was when I was in a finance role with an early stage company, and we were going to a meeting with the government for a grant, just kind of the final phases of a grant that was an onerous process. And we'd already been through many of the hoops. But we went into the government building down the hall. There was me and one of my teammates. And I went to knock on the door and I couldn't knock. I stopped and I turned to Hussam and said, oh, this isn't going to go well. And he said, yes, it is. We've done all the heavy lifting. We're just meeting the other guy. And I said, yeah, I don't know. So we went in and some financial guy showed up and just raked us over the coals again, to a point where even his teammates are telling him, you just don't understand this. You don't get it. But we did come out. We came out successful. But as we were walking down the street, he stopped me. My partner stopped me and said, how did you know that? And I said, no, what? And he said, how did you know it was going to go sideways? And I said, I didn't know that. I just guessed. And he said, no, Brenda, you didn't. You know, you do this to us all the time. You always know things way before we know them. And so we argued kind of, no, I don't. And we argued kind of all the way back to the office and met up with the CEO. And he said, Kevin, tell her that she does this to us all the time. And Kevin said, you know, Brenda, you do. And he said, it is time that you woke up and started sharing this gift with the world, because you're hurting us all by keeping it to yourself. So that was it. Everything came down, and I started feeling safer to show my magic. I felt safer to shine that on the world.
Haven't you found life is just much more delicious?
It is. But, you know, I do find still that there's some of those remnants of that old fear that still exists. You know, I'll come into certain situations where, you know, somebody will make a comment like, oh, you're so weird, like just even in a friendly way, and it'll go, I can't do this. So there's still little remnants of it, but man, it's just the whole world takes on a whole new vibrancy when you can be real and stand in your power.
Do you think that everybody has the capacity to develop their intuition, or do you think that you were born special? I'm of course asking that question from a very selfish point of view.
Yeah.
Because you and I both, or maybe you missed that on the second 2 opportunity of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
I did a really incredible energy healing, and the funny thing is that afterwards I felt like, why did I do that? Why did I reveal who I really am? Right? You know, it's like this fear of judgment. And as a child, when I moved to Australia from Papua New Guinea, and I would tell stories about our lifestyle in Papua New Guinea, and other children would call me a liar. Yeah. And I was absolutely telling the truth. And I think it was just very interesting. I'm glad I didn't take that identity on, because otherwise I could be a pathological sociopath, you know. But it's really funny how other people react to you, because they have no reference for what it is that you're saying.
They don't. I had a really good, one of my closest friends one night. Now, it was about 2 a.m, and she'd been drinking rather heavily, and she said, you know, I just started talking kind of openly with another friend there that was asking questions about Reiki, about different things. And this other friend said, you have to stop this, like just stop this. You are so weird, and you gotta get your act together. And then she stomped off and went to bed, and I'm sitting there going, shit, what do I do? Like, I'm literally 3 hours from home, and I was just tempted to get in the car and run. But her husband stayed out on the deck with me, and he said, I said to him, he apologized for her, and I said, you know, I'm used to getting that, but I said, you know what you guys fail to do is ever ask me what I believe and why I believe it, and how can you judge me when you don't even know what brought me to this point? And he said, okay. He said, so Brenda, what do you believe and why do you believe it? We sat up for about another 3 hours talking about all the different life experiences that I'd had that led me to this. And I said, so you still think I'm really weird? And he said, no. He said, I think you're a beautiful human being that has had really different experiences than I've had. And I said, thank you. Thank you. That's all I need to hear, you know, is that acceptance of who I am. Not that you think I expect you to be like me or that you need to be like me, but the acceptance of me stepping into my power and being who I came here to be. That's what I was looking for. So, but to answer your question about intuition, the way I believe I teach it with my students and stuff is that I equate it to the internet. Everyone has access to it. Everyone can tap in. It just depends on how much they're willing to invest in their equipment. So some people won't invest anything to the internet. They can't tap in. Others get the most high-powered equipment that they possibly can, and they get much better reception and much better performance. With intuition, the investment is in yourself. What are you willing to, like, what attachments are you willing to let go of? What belief systems no longer serve you? Well, it takes a lot of courage to look in deep within and reveal who you really are. Society has not conditioned us to be accepting of anything that falls outside of that very narrow norm. So it takes a lot of courage to go there, and that's the investment that you need in order to tap into intuition.
Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. And indeed, every now and again, I tap into some friends of mine who do really great spiritual energy healing, just so that I can cleanse and purify this vessel that is my own, so that I can actually receive and more easily. And it's interesting because I think about how you might go and pay an accountant, and you know, Brenda, I know you know what that's like, people who really want your accounting skills. You might go and pay a lawyer, or you might go and pay a marketing consultant. And I actually also opt to pay for people who really have these incredible psychic powers, because it aids and abets everything that I want to achieve in business and also in life, and it helps me to navigate. And I think that that investment as well has proven to me time and time again to be essential. I think we all need those kinds of advisors.
It's the most valuable investment that you can get. Like, you can tap into that power. You can create all kinds of abundance that can pay all of those other guys to do all this stuff without blinking an eye. But just because you've got a good lawyer or a good accountant doesn't mean that you can create the abundance, or even a good marketing person. It doesn't mean that you can create that level of abundance and flow in your life that you need. And just joy. When I talk about abundance, it's not just money. It's that abundance of relationships, of joy, of wealth of every description.
Definitely on the same page there. A wealth of ideas, a wealth of opportunities, a wealth of friends. Yeah.
And just knowing the right ones. So when you tap in and when you can align with that higher power, you don't get a lot of the riffraff. And by riffraff, I don't mean good or bad. I mean, what's riffraff to me might be the perfect thing for you. But what ends up happening when I'm aligned is what comes through is the thing that is exactly what I need at this time. And that's where I need to focus. There might be a dozen other things on my radar screen. And you know, from as an entrepreneur, you've got like 15 different things that are of top priority, and it makes your head spin sometimes. Like, I feel ADHD. I really do. I start down this, and then I see one comment that takes me way over here, and then I forget all about doing that thing. And then I'll do this and I'll see a comment and it takes me back there. And I was laughing with a guy today. He sent me an email. I read the first line, which said, "Hey, you haven't done this thing that you promised to do." And I went, "Oh crap." So I went over, and it was just paying him a deposit. So I go over to PayPal and I paid it. And I emailed him back and I said, "Oh, did you get my email? Like, I was looking for this and that." And he got back to me and said, "Did you read the rest of my email?" He said, "I read it. It gave everything that I needed, everything that I got back to him with." And I went, no, I think I'm ADD or ADHD. And I said, I read to the shiny object and then I was off in a different direction. And so sorry, here's the, the PayPal payment or whatever was coming. But it is that way. And when I can tap in and become really aligned with myself and that inner magic within me, I don't get distracted that way. I'll tell you what happens is, even though I have 100 different things to do, I can't figure out, my mind will not go to anything but one. Like, I sit there and I go, I don't even know what, like, I know I've got so many things to do. I can't think of what they are. And sometimes the one thing is go out for a hike, go out and sit by the water, go in nature. Like it's not, but no, I got like 15 things I got to get off today, but what are they? I can't even find them within my mind space anywhere. So, but then when it's time, they all come back, but they happen so much easier that way. When they come
Oh, I
back at
love
the
your
right
honesty.
time, they just happen so easily.
Benny, you and I definitely are keen observers of this phenomenon, the busyness that is life, so that the majority of us end up feeling like we do have ADD or ADHD. And I'm not sure that there aren't some technologies that have been developed that have some unintended consequences of causing the world to become more like this. And they're literally being a causative effect. And so we pride ourselves at Positive Prime on being the antithesis of that, an actual positive technology that helps people to really be focused and concentrated on that which is genuinely decent and good and affirming and empowering and so forth. Brenda, tell us a little bit about the work that you do, because who you are has really informed the creation of a very special process that you now teach others to actually go and introduce into organizational environments and all sorts of other teams, whether they're sporting teams or they're teams in businesses. Tell us a little bit about it, because now we've done that backstory. I think that people understand like just how exquisite the tools are that you've created and the approach that you take.
Right. And so I've actually got two different projects on the go. So one is Awakening Consciously and one is UEQ, and they play beautifully together. Basically what we're doing is supporting people to become more consciously aware of who they are right now, who they're being, and who they would really choose to be. And very often those two things are not aligned at all. And when people can become aware of how they're being in the world, as opposed to what they're really being called to be, they start to awaken. And we help them shift from resistance to responsibility for their higher purpose in this new world. There's a quote from Buddha that I just love. He said, "There's only one time when it is essential to awaken, and that time is now." And I don't think that there's been another time in history where that is more relevant than it is today. So let me draw on an analogy with the butterfly. When a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, it doesn't just sprout wings and fly out as a butterfly. It actually completely breaks down into nothing but mush, and then builds those component parts, puts them all back together again, and evolves into a completely new species. And it emerges as a butterfly. So this is evolution, and it is the process that we find ourselves in the midst of right now. So with every system that we have come to rely on for our life, seeing it, every one of them disintegrate before our eyes, we're facing this brilliant opportunity to work together to co-create an entirely new world, one that we're thrilled to leave as a legacy for future generations. So we all came into this world wrapped in a unique form of magic for the purpose of enhancing life for ourselves and for those around us. And it's really time to illuminate that magic, to step into our power, to allow the world to experience our full brilliance. And this is what the world needs us to do and to contribute to create that new template. If we can stand in that integrity of our truth and embrace our own uniqueness, we provide the fuel for evolution. So both of the projects that I have, whether it's UEQ or Awakening Consciously, they approach it from slightly different angles, but they're so totally related. Where UEQ works on the interpersonal skills, the relationship with others, how to have powerful conversations, how to break through emotional trauma, emotional blocks. We take that into corporations when we're working with team dynamics, because and I'm sure you understand this, a business entity has got an energy of its own. It is an individual. So it has its own personality style, often made up of the compilation of all the personality styles within it. But it has its own personality style. It has its own set of values that could be slightly different from the people that are involved, because it is that compilation. So we go in and actually treat every organization as an entity. And we look at all of the same things. It has an energy body around it. It has a purpose. It has a soul in and of itself. And when you can tap into that and find that innate magic, that unique magic that each of those entities have all on their own, then they can really step into their purpose, to what that entity was created for, and how it's going to help humanity. So many people don't do that. No, I don't think many companies even consider the fact that their company is an entity, an energy field all of itself. So we'll bring in, and we work with things like UEQ focuses mostly on the emotions, but you know from the work that you've done that mindset and emotions really are not so much interchangeable, but one doesn't survive without the other. So your thoughts drive your emotions, but your emotions drive your thoughts as well. And it's that circular thing. So when we can go in and create a really healthy mindset within a company and manage those emotional traumas that are present within that, whether those are within the individuals in the corporation or within the entity itself, when you put together all of these competing human beings and all of the traumas that they bring in, they create a whole different energy within that entity. So we work, whether it's with individuals tapping into their truth and tapping into their magic, or we take it to the organization level and tap into that within an organization. It's all pretty much the same, but different.
It's almost obvious because it's called an entity. You know,
Yeah.
like we forget about language a lot of the time. And I love that you're bringing this back to the table, because you're so right. All of these things that we're creating, all of our businesses are, you know, they go through developmental stages.
Yeah.
And we're really like parenting, stewarding them. And if we're doing it in the right way and for the future of a planet that we all want to live in, and someday we'll let them go, and they'll continue to grow and continue to be amazing, just like a child will.
Absolutely.
And
serve the
unfortunately,
purpose.
exactly. And unfortunately, the problem is that a lot of these businesses, they've lost their integrity. They've lost what that was when they first were born. And perhaps some of them didn't have integrity to start off with, but that's another story. But let's just say they do for this, because it's a nicer conversation, and they lose it. And that's a lot of the time not their fault, because the system that we're kind of in at the moment is to make as much money. And Kim mentioned it before. It's kind of like there's a lot of wrongs in the system, the attention economy, which has come out of this, which grows these monsters. But at the core, we know that there's good in the humans, and in a lot of cases, we can bring alignment back to everyone. And I love the way that you've spoken about people who've come into your life, perhaps in unexpected places at work, which is not usually the narrative. Usually the narrative will beat the genius and the intuition out of you as well. So that's beautiful. So that's amazing. Absolutely. And then through your friends who are willing to listen. And so I'd love you to speak to, what can someone do? And perhaps it's with good tools that we all use, like Positive Prime. But what can someone do to take that first step if they feel like they're in a role where they're not being allowed to transition into the butterfly, or even just feel into their intuition?
Well, you know, and this is you bring the butterfly in. They almost have to go into that cocoon and break down all of the conditioning, break through all of that conditioning that we've been subjected to, all of the people that have told us it's wrong to be who we are and tried to turn us into some kind of mechanical device that achieves their purpose, not our purpose. So whether we're talking about an individual, we've all been subject to, especially the more advanced generations, everybody is subjected to conditioning, but I know like in the generation that I came out of, children were supposed to be seen and not heard. You were punished for speaking your voice. You were stuck in a classroom where you were told to shut up for 8 hours a day and only speak when you're spoken to. And that you had, we trained kids. Here's what ended up happening with my generation and the generation even following is we trained kids to be introverts. And then after 12 years of training them to be introverts, we kicked them out into the world and said, go and be aggressive, go and make a difference. And they have, they're an introvert now. They're none of those gifts that, I think that the science is about 78% of people are actually naturally extroverts. We are built to relate to other people and take ourselves outside of ourselves. And yet we were conditioned to be introverts until they didn't want us to be introverts anymore. And then they assumed that we knew how to be extroverts when there was so much conditioning. So we have to break through that conditioning. What I love now is there's like Positive Prime, like the work that Jackie Simmons does, like the work that we do at UEQ, there is some powerful tools that make this so much simpler than the way that I had to do it. Like it took me 20 years to get through all of this because I had no help at all. And I look back now and I think, man, I could bust through this in a day and a half. Now with these tools that are around, as the energy in the planet accelerates, and we know scientifically that it doesn't just seem like life is going a lot faster. Life is going a lot faster. And it's an astrological, it's a scientific fact. People are feeling that pressure of that stuff, but the joy of that is what used to take 20 years can be done in a few weeks to break through that. So there's plenty of opportunity for people to, whether it's, and I believe it's a combination of a bunch of things. I don't say that we at Awakening Consciously or UEQ have all the answers. I say we are really excited about collaborating with people who have another element that we don't have. So we're partnering with Jackie and her Success Journey Academy, and we partner with Positive Prime. They all add a different dimension to a multidimensional experience. So it's so just tapping in. It's almost like you can come in from any one of those gateways and find yourself in the midst of an enormous amount of support that that is available. When I was a CFO, a Chief Financial Officer, and I joined venture forums. So for those that don't know what a venture forum is, it's where a lot of resources, whether it's legal or financial or accounting or VAs, a lot of those resources, investors primarily, will come together. Entrepreneurs from startup companies come in and do a pitch, and the point of it is everybody contributes to that community what their specialty is to help the entrepreneurs grow into, from a startup company to grow into a fully functioning company. Being as intuitive as I was, it disgusted me because I could sit there and I could see all these people that were really just there to cherry pick the best of the bunch and run off with them into their own community. They had no desire to contribute to that community. And at that time, somehow it came across my awareness that the words compete, when it broke down into its original Latin components, com and pete, actually translated into thrive together. That is the definition of compete or competition. And even this was 20 years ago. And even at the time I went, man, that's the world that I want to live in. That's what I want. And here I am 20 years later. That's the world that I see creating or evolving before me, is where everybody wants to thrive. And there's more than enough resources for every business out there to thrive. But it's not the kill or be killed kind of attitude that I grew up with. It's how do we work together and make this such a fertile environment that anybody who plants a seed in that can grow into a very vibrant, useful entity of its own. How do we create that environment? Well, we create it through collaboration. We create it by working together and all seeding and fertilizing the soil so that these extremely powerful companies and individuals, I'm not just saying it's just about companies, but we sprout out these beautiful individuals that then go on. And it's like you tell two friends and they tell two friends and they tell two friends. If you help one person that goes out and helps two other people, and then they go out and help two other people, we have evolved our planet. Plain and simple. This becomes the world that we, like I say, the legacy that I would want to leave to my kids.
I love that. I think a lot of people lose sight of the fact that all you need to do maybe today is to really help two people, or at least one person, sufficiently, appropriately, adequately, and ignite within them the desire to go and help at least one person or two people, right? So I think that what I've noticed is that there are a lot of great advisors and consultants and coaches and mentors and so forth, and they're so focused on helping this one person, but it's almost like they leave the bit at the end, or maybe it should be at the beginning, that says, oh, and can we spend a little bit of time and energy thinking about how you can now go and share this with others?
Yeah.
You know, there's not this, hey, the flavor of everything that I'm doing is actually that I'm going to have a request or an ask of, as I help you, not will you come back and help me, that whole reciprocity thing that was very much, you know, the 80s and 90s and so forth, but will you pay that forward?
And that is the new reciprocity. It's not that reciprocity has disappeared, it's that it evolved into like, help me evolve humanity here.
Yeah. I help you, you help others, they help others, and there's a ripple effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, you know, I see so many people that, and powerful helpers, but they have one aspect of it, and they try to present themselves as having the whole solution for people. I know a lot of people, a lot of powerful people out there, and I don't know anybody who has the full package to help one individual evolve into their complete full truth. Like, not one.
Brenda, you know, that very philosophy and idea is cooked into Positive Prime. I rarely tell this story, but I originally created it with only my content for my clients. But actually before that, it was really just only an intervention for me. And it is so much richer because it has your session that you've authored, and indeed Jack Canfield's and Marissa Peers and Jackie Simmons, and you know, all of the subscribers of Positive Prime, they get to have you on their shoulder, your energy wrapped around them whilst they're viewing your session. Then, of course, they'll have, for example, Angela's Diet Renegade one, or they'll have, you know, Dee Terrell's or Audrey's, or the point is that even I, for my clients, couldn't actually give them all of the content and wisdom and suggestions and advice that a collection of 100 people could give them. That's actually one of the reasons why I love that we actually evolved into a platform that publishes sessions for others to use in their work or in their teams and so forth. Yeah, you know, even as I approach my own health and recovery, and I'm sure that you were like this in that 5 long years, it wasn't just the chiropractor. In my case, it's the chiropractor. It's also the essential oils that I use that are of therapeutic grade. It's also that I drink alkalizing water. It's also that I remind myself that I must actually go to bed early and I have to get a good quality night's sleep. And oh yes, and, you know, you don't get to, quite frankly, be more vibrant after a really serious health challenge unless you've got this very collective approach, all of the ingredients, all the pieces of the puzzle.
Absolutely. There's not one. We're multifaceted beings, and we have to be addressed in that fashion. And I love what you're doing with Positive Prime by pulling together all of these things. It's kind of one-stop shopping for people to come and look at, you know, what they need. I know for me, it was trial and error. I had to pay a lot of money going out and trying different things. And even though they were powerful at what they did, it wasn't what worked for me. you know, it was a great modality, but it wasn't what my body needed at the time. Now, if I knew then what I know now, and I could tap in and align and say, what is the next best thing for me? I could have saved a heck of a lot of time and money doing that and getting the solutions. And in fact, that's what I do with Positive Prime. Like, I will tap in and say, which is the best session for me today? And often it'll come up to be something that I'm thinking, really? Like, really? There's so many other ones that I want to try here, but really? And I do that one, and it always ends up to be the perfect one. So when you can combine all of those skills, you can tap into those resources in such an efficient manner, and pull out the nuggets that are right for you. What's right for me the next day could be something completely different over on the exact opposite end of the scale. But as long as I'm tapping in and aligning before, and alignment is easy. It's just really breathing. It's just breathing and you know, like if you've ever sat in stillness and taken a few deep breaths, which I'm sure that both of you have, it's after like 2 or 3 breaths, all of a sudden you feel like that tension melting away, and then you start feeling like you're floating, like you've got huge expansion, no boundaries. That's when you're in alignment. That's when you can ask questions and really know that you're going to get the right answer from that. So it's that's the work that we do with people, is help them clear a lot of that emotional baggage out of the way, all those belief systems, the limiting beliefs, the all of the junk that gets in the way, the debris, that energetic debris that clogs the system. If we can flush that out, people can get to that state of alignment so easily, and you know, life just becomes joyful.
I love that. I do.
You were
Brenda,
talking about igniting people and pulling those resources together, and I know you and I have talked about the conference that we're putting on in April and May. One's for entrepreneurs, one's for bigger corporations, but it is about that. It's igniting. It's called Igniting Brilliant Influencers, and that's exactly what we're doing, is bringing these influencers together and, you know, giving the audience an experience of a number of different things that they can take, you know, that they can cherry pick. They can figure out which one works for them. But the whole goal of that is to create, to help the audience become influencers in and of themselves in whatever their superpower is, and then take that out, you know, to their audience, or to come back to our next conference and train other influencers to be influencers. So it really is creating, you know, helping people become the leader of leaders.
Oh, I love it. A journey that we've all been on here in this podcast as participants, and maybe for those of you who are listening. I think that is a beautiful step up as well. I think that being a leader of leaders is actually a very different identity than being a leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I even posit in this world right now, just being a leader, you might be a leader for a day, and then the whole world has evolved beyond you, and you're no longer a leader. Unless you can create other leaders to lead along with you, you're going to miss the boat as this acceleration, this energy accelerates on us. So it really is critical that we train leaders to be the leader of leaders.
Brenda, is there a very quick and simple and easy, you know, I like quick and simple and easy. Positive Prime is press play, allow it to work on you. It's super quick and it's enduring, it's sustainable. So is there a quick and simple and easy way for somebody to tap into just exploring a little bit more about emotional intelligence and their own, and maybe a process that highlights an area where they're triggered and may need to actually really do some cleansing and purifying and some actual real work around that? How does someone get started? Like, I actually do think that there are an enormous number of people who've heard about being emotionally intelligent, but they've confused it with some kind of executive skill. And it's, quite frankly, as we all know here, No, it's a life skill for every single one of us, and for the 12-year-olds and the 6-year-olds and the 18-year-olds and the 80-year-olds in every single aspect of our lives.
UEQ started with card decks. We have what we call neuro gamification. So it's brain science programmed into card decks. I don't even have one on I cleaned up. But we play cards. We play card games, and we would take them into corporations for team dynamics, for corporate workshops, and every single one of them was hijacked by parents. Every single one of them, we would have people say, how do we get this to our kids? Our kids need to learn these habits when they're really young. And how do we get this to the schools? And we didn't have an answer. We had 4 card decks then. That was what we were playing with. And we didn't have an answer to that. So we went back and developed a 7-deck series that addresses, the brain from 3 years old to 14 years old. And we've taken that into professional sports, and we've taken that into corporations and into a group of psychologists asked us to develop a series for the when Black Lives Matter, when that whole protests and riots broke out, they came to us and said, could we do something for diversity? And so we developed our Race to Empathy series, which is 7 decks, and we've got our sports series at 7 decks. We've got over 30 decks now that address everybody in every realm of life.
So can anyone just buy one of these and just start playing a game, or do they have to actually do that with somebody else? Do you need to know what to do?
They all have instructions. They can buy the decks, and they come with instruction cards, and they're available on our website, which is you-eq.com. But we do encourage people, and I know that most people will buy the deck and then they come back and they want to be part of the community, because we do online gameplay with the community. We play any one of these 30 different decks of cards at any given time. And it really is, because emotional intelligence is an interpersonal skill. So it is a life skill. It is dealing with your own emotional baggage. But the point of that is so that you can come out of your shell and actually interact is the word I'm looking for, interact with other people. And so it is a social skill. When you look at emotional intelligence, like you said, there's so much ambiguity around it. It's a term that is a buzzword, and everybody uses it slightly differently. And it just creates a whole bunch of confusion where nobody knows exactly what it is. The way that we define it is being intelligent about emotions. Just being aware of the emotions that are going on within you and the emotions that you're experiencing in your environment with other people. Have you ever walked into a room and wish that you could back right out again? Like you're going, you've heard people say you can cut the tension with a knife. People feel the energy in rooms. They feel those emotions have a vibration, and they can go on a scale from contracting, from shame and hopelessness, right up to peace and joy. And they feel those emotions in the room. So how do you manage that when you get in the midst of it in a boardroom? Like, how do you manage emotions that come up, or conflict, or different things? So being intelligent about emotions is really what the whole name of the game is. And we teach people how to have, like, our entry-level course is a 6-week course, and we just teach them about conversation traps, these habits that we have that nobody's ever taught us differently. And like, have you ever had a conversation with somebody that went completely off the rails, like completely bad, like and you're going, what the heck happened? And that's not where I started out. I didn't start out trying to create conflict. I made a simple statement and the whole thing went sideways. And it's because you've fallen into one of these conversation traps that they're very simple to get out of them. They're simple to identify them, but nobody's ever been educated in that way. Nobody's ever been taught to look at how their language, how their conversations can trigger somebody or sabotage relationships. Nobody ever taught us that. So what we do at UEQ is we teach the science and language of emotions just through conversation training. And then we play card games to take those skills that we talk about and train the brain to make them a habit. So that happens. The heavy lifting happens with the games. But people, and quite honestly, people don't need to know any of that stuff if they just play the games right. most people want to know why this is having the effect that it has. I had in one of our corporate workshops, I had a guy called me up and took me, he participated. We played games for about 20, 30 minutes. And he called me up and took me for breakfast a couple of weeks later. And he said, "What the hell did you do to me?" And I said, "What?" And he said, I played your games for like 15 minutes and my whole life changed. Like I talked to my wife different. I talked to my kids different. I talked to people at work different. I talked to my team different. How is that even possible in 15 minutes? And it is because of the neuroscience that's programmed into them. So we teach that. That's the UEQ part of it. And the awakening consciously, we focus more on the energy, the vibration, the vibrational frequency that people are tapping into, and just helping people understand their energy body, their chakra systems, what impacts it, what heals it, what sabotages it, all of those things. Just again, building awareness about the tool that they've been gifted with and how to use it to enhance their lives. So we do both of those, and people can reach out to me, and I can tell them which direction to start in, because it's almost like this octopus that has so many different arms, because we don't use a cookie cutter approach to it. Not every way. It's like you having 150 different sessions. We have a number of different entry points, but it just depends on what your primary challenge is, where you would start. You'd eventually go through the whole process, but your entry point will be different depending on what your challenge, what's top of the rung. Top rung.
I found that most people don't actually know what their primary challenge is. It's like somebody comes to me for coaching around they're going through a divorce. And actually the real issue is forgiveness towards themselves for making the decision to ever marry the wrong person in the first place.
Yeah.
And they're never going to get there while they're focusing on how they're hemorrhaging or bleeding money. And then there's all these words that are used like that. And then they create these incredible situations that impact their physical health. And so they think that they've actually got a problem with their well-being, and they're looking at diet or exercise. No, actually it's a forgiveness issue.
Or they often blame other people. Like, I can't tell you how many people, even from my immediate family, man, if my kids would just sort themselves out, I could be happy. Or if my husband would quit being an idiot, I could be so happy. And I'm going, no, wrong focus, wrong focal point. But that's the way that we're taught. We're taught not to be accountable for our own decisions or our own experience. And this is where the law of attraction comes in. And I try to explain that to people is, if you just raise your vibration up, you can attract something completely different, but it all starts within you. And it's hard to get. Some people are ready to awaken. I think that the whole catastrophe that we've been through in the last couple of years has got a whole bunch of people ready to awaken now, but they just don't know where to go. But there's some people who will never move out of the old paradigm that they're in, that they'll just live in there till they don't. The sad part is, and I'm all about, your choice, your life, like, great. Where it really bothers me is when I see kids involved or other people that are sucked into that old energy that have much longer lives to live and really need to be learning different things.
This issue is so massive. Something that's just popping up for me is conversation I had at a dinner party last night. There's somebody who works for the Australian Federal Police, or maybe it's the state police, and 90% of their call outs are for domestic violence. Yeah. And in more than 90% of the cases, it's men being physically abusive towards women. And we were talking about how it doesn't seem to actually be limited to a particular socioeconomic group or a particular education level, or it's pervasive across all aspects of society. And it's just completely hidden from what is certainly average Australia, and I'm sure that's everywhere else in the world. And so then I like, if only we could teach emotional intelligence to all the children so that they could actually learn to deal with their emotions in really healthy ways. And then how do we actually take all of these people who may be now within a system that's actually going to punish them and actually have them, yes, understand the consequences of their actions and go through some kind of remedial effort that gives them that emotional intelligence as a result of the process. So we need another hour or two to have this conversation for sure.
Exactly. But I'll tell you, there's some abusers that will never change. But I would say that the majority of them do not like who they are, especially in those moments, but they don't have another way out. And they're the ones that would jump at any opportunity to teach them to be different than the way they're being. And it's basically just coping skills. Like, you're looking at the power dynamics. They've been taught that the way that you appear powerful is to have power over other people, not to have that power within yourself. But the more that you can, impose your power on other people, and really take, own the entire power dynamics within a relationship has to reside with them. Nobody else can have power because that's a threat to their own power dynamics, their sense of control. When they realize that, man, when you level that out and you level out those power dynamics and everybody has that balanced power, that's where joy comes into your life. That's where you don't have to be in control of every other person in your thing. That's a fear-based reaction. And when you can help them to see that and to shift the way that they're being, their life opens up in ways that they can't even imagine. And all of a sudden the violence is gone. So, and again, that's both emotional intelligence, that's chakra stuff, it's tapping into your own power, into your authenticity, really residing within your own power and not having to externalize to make yourself look powerful because you feel very weak inside. So there's there's a whole world out there that needs this stuff. Without a doubt. My grandson asked me the other day, he hates school. He's 14. He hates school. He's been living with me for this last week. And trying to get him to school is such a challenge. And he says, I hate school. And I said, if you had to rebuild the education system, what would it look like? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, what? He said, it wouldn't be math. And it wouldn't be this. And I said, no, what would it be though? And he couldn't answer me. But we talked about it a little bit more. And it was interesting what he said. I said, what I teach right now is teach people how to build interpersonal relationships. And he said, well, people just know how to do that. And I'm going, that's what people are led to believe, is that it's just innate. People will figure it out for themselves. And what ends up happening is we have these out of whack power dynamics. We have abusers. We have this mess that we've created is because we never thought that anybody had to be educated on how to manage their emotions, how to have empowering conversations with people, how to balance out power dynamics. Nobody's ever been taught that because nobody thought it was important enough to teach people. They thought that, calculus was more important than how do you build these relationships. So, it was such an interesting, insightful conversation from a 14-year-old. And because when I explained to him what happens, he said, oh, you're right. Right. I never looked at it that way. And I'm going, why would you? Nobody's ever illuminated that aspect of life for anybody to actually see that it exists.
Yeah, we could just keep talking, couldn't we? We'd need a part two.
Yeah.
So a quick one. What would you say to anyone who's potentially interested in this? Maybe they might be listening, and what would you say is kind of like an entry level in? Is there a question they could ask themselves? Is there something that your go-to is that where you start from with people?
I think that we start from, I kind of have the split personality because the two companies are actually separate, but they're so related. I would say the place to start is Jackie and I are partnering now. Like, we're putting all of our products together. They're all emotional based products. And it's almost a wheel that just keeps turning, and there's different entry points, but I would say jump into the next course that we're teaching, because, and that can be through UEQ's website, through me, reach out to me. But there could be a 6-week course on conversation, or it's now interpersonal relationship mastery is where we have. Jackie's got a course on breaking through emotional trauma and, you know, breaking those emotional barriers. And they're all running. They run one after another. So it depends on what.
They're live. You can't just sign up and do them, and you're in your own time, available 24/7.
Yeah, there will be evergreen versions of this. What we find is that because they're relationship based and because they're emotional based, like a lot of emotional stuff, people have to be present with you
I agree.
to help you move through. Like to do it on your own just doesn't seem to work. Because like our interpersonal relationship management, you can learn the science there, but really the heavy lifting is done by the games. Doesn't mean that you can't join a gameplay, because we have them we offer them through the week just for the public consumption. But it's just, you know, what I find with people is it's hard for them to connect the dots. So I would say there's always something running that will help you tap into your emotions in one form or another. And, you know, it's like a bicycle wheel. Like, where do you start on it? It doesn't really matter. It still goes that same cycle, and people can reach out. And so, you know, as a call to action from this, if somebody's really curious, reach out to me and have a conversation. And
you know that we've got tens of thousands of people in our community, don't you?
I might need a bigger phone line. But they will all phone me at the same time. Here's
what I would suggest that you do. Go and watch Brenda Jacobson's Positive Prime session. Go and watch Jackie Simmons' Positive Prime session. Get to feel the energy or the essence of these extraordinary humans who are here in service of you being your best and brightest self, so that you can actually go out and serve others in a really powerful, wonderful way. And then absolutely go have a look at their websites, see what they're doing, and then figure out for yourself, allow your intuition to guide you as to which course you want to sign up to. Maybe even buy one of the card decks. You know, your group, you know, play. At the same dinner party last night, I heard this fabulous story where one of the guests does whiskey tastings via Zoom.
Oh,
There's
wow.
actually a company here in Australia who sends out tiny little bottles that are samples of these whiskies. They get onto Zoom, and you know, basically a master sommelier. I don't even know if there's a real person's, you know, title for whiskies instead of wines, but anyway, guides them through these tastings. And I thought to myself, golly gosh, I actually love that idea. They're in community, they're having fun. I mean, I don't actually drink alcohol at the moment, so, you know, I'm not going to show up to a whiskey tasting, but like, how ingenious.
But how ingenious is that?
Yeah, I love the idea. Right. So I've seen that there are these arts classes that you can do where you're painting in your own environment, like you put your camera back, and it's called Sip and Paint or something, and you're doing that collectively in these Zoom meetings. So Brenda, I love the idea of playing games with others. I think that the companionship is absolutely something that we're all really wanting to savor, particularly with like-minded people.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So can people find that very easily via your website?
Yeah.
How to participate in an online game if they've got a card deck?
Yeah, they can. We have a calendar that has the scheduled events on it, and they can just click and join an event.
All right. Well, if you're listening, maybe Benny and I will see you in one of these card games. I quite like that idea.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually doing them for different communities now. Like Jackie's doing them for her community. Another group is doing it for their community. And we do it just publicly for our own community and for people that join.
Love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
It's growing. We actually, because of when COVID hit on our printer shut down, we couldn't sell physical card decks. And so we pivoted very quickly and got digital card decks that are available. And we haven't
Wow.
got our membership site up and running, but we will put our membership site together, and there'll be weekly card games as part of that membership.
Fantastic.
It's the digital ones, but then people have the option of buying the physical decks as well.
Oh, I love it. It's a very rainy day in tropical Queensland today. It's one of those torrential rain tropical
wow.
days. These are the kinds of days when families that are on vacation, and Benny and I live in an area of Australia where everybody likes to come to for their holidays with their families.
Nice.
It's paradise. It's like Playa del Carmen, or in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the equivalent is
lovely.
elsewhere, but anyway, a family holiday destination. And so I can see all of these parents stuck in these condos or apartments, as we would call them, all these hotel rooms, all needing these games to play.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Yeah, so.
All righty. Well, thank you so very much for being our special guest today. We've really enjoyed the conversation. We hope those of you who are listening have done as well. Please do go and watch those Positive Prime sessions. Please do go and have a look at Brenda's website. You'll see her website address is in the comments, or it's in the email, however it is that you've found this recording.
Yeah, it'll be there.
Yeah. Thank you, Brenda. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you,
Another
guys.
wonderful conversation. Looking forward to the
Thank
next
you,
one.
Benny.
Exactly.
Mwah.
Thanks a lot, Benny.